Okay, so welcome to Module 15, Segment 1, Episode 1 of our multi-episodic arc. So in Module 14, we were looking at all kinds of 4-note chords. We started with the most common 3 chords, which is the major 7, the minor 7, and the dominant 7. Right? Then we went through a whole bunch of other ones that are widely used and are musically useful, just not as much as those first 3. I wanted to take this module to unlock kind of doing them on the keyboard first, which is a little bit easier to understand and maybe easier to visualize, and then unlocking them on the fretboard. I want you to just turn your attention to the keyboard for a second, and we are looking at laying out these different types of chords on the keyboard. So first off, we'll just keep everything in major, in C major. So here's the C scale. If we're going to do the major 7 chord, we're going to do the 1, 3, 5, and 7 of that key. Now, voicing-wise, remember, voicing, we can move things around. So I could take my C bottom note of the chord, put it down here for a bass note, and then I can double it, or I could not play this note completely because it's down here. I could take the B and bring it down here, and there's a nice voicing for a C major 7 chord. Okay. Alternatively, I could do the minor 7th chord, which is the next one. Let's take the key of D major. So here's the D major scale: D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. And a D major 7 chord would be the 1, 3, 5, major 7. Those are all different voicings. And if I wanted to make that now into a minor 7 chord, I flat the 3rd and I flat the 7. So I take both of those black keys, excuse me, and I take them down a half step, keeping their internal relationship of the perfect 5th. But now I've got them D minor 7, D, F natural, which is the flatted 3rd, A, and C natural, which is the flatted 7. So, okay. Then next we look at the dominant, which I messed with a little bit when we didn't in 14. We didn't have the camera on here, but let's look at the key of A major. A would have A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. The formula for the dominant 7 chord would be 1, major 3rd, perfect 5th, and flat 7. So here's our dominant 7. And once again, I could do a bottom note here. I could take the 7 down here with my thumb. There's another voicing of the exact same combination of notes. 1, 3, 5, flat 7. Now, of course, we can move those chords around in all kinds of ways. These are used all day, every day. But by the same token, I'm going to stay on that A dominant 7 for a moment and move ahead to the other 7th chord, just so we can visualize this on the keyboard. On the other 7th chord, you have a minor 3rd and a major 7th. So now we have a minor major 7th. Yeah? Does that make sense a little bit, just in terms of how it's laid out on the keyboard? Now again, as we talked about towards the end, that each of these chords are a triad on the top with another note at the bottom. So this A minor major 7 could also be described as a C augmented triad with an A in the bass. Right? So as long as I'm keeping my C augmented triad notes, same notes, as long as I've got that A in the bass, I have an A minor major 7. Okay? So once again, voicing and doubling becomes a factor here in coming up with different ways of playing these chords. Now then we moved forward into the 6th chords, a minor 6th and a major 6th. In both cases, the 6th itself is a major 6th interval. So when we describe the chord with our shortcut of minor 6th or major 6th, we're talking about the 3rd interval at that point. So let's go back to C, just to make the devil mad. The devil hates the key of C, so use it as often as possible. Just kidding. So if we start off with a major triad, major C, and if we add the 6th, now this is a 6th chord, a major 6th chord, and then if I now take the 3rd and make it minor, That is a minor sixth chord. Okay, and we're going to come back to that in a minute. Look at that, the way this looks on the keyboard, and in a few minutes we're going to come back. So put a pin in this, the minor sixth shape and those notes. In this case, the C minor 6 is a C, E flat, G, and A. And if you're writing stuff down, jot that down because it's going to come up in a second. C, E flat, G, and A. And just for grins, not to make Brandy mad at me, but my lovely wife who's editing the video this time around, I'm going to write them up here. The C minor 6th has these notes: C, E flat, G, and A. And a little later, we're going to come back to that. Okay? Now, so that kind of explains a little bit of the sixth chords. Next, we start moving into chords where the fifth is moving around. Right? Up until now, it's the perfect fifth has stayed in shape. So we can flat the 5, we can sharp the 5, diminish them or augmented. Dominant flat 5. Now, this particular chord is great at having a unique tension that would then get resolved. Okay? Let's take an A, and on A, let's make a dominant 7 flat 5 chord. So dominant 7 would give us a major third, perfect fifth, and a flat 7. That's an A dominant 7th chord. If we flat the 5, we take this E and take it down to E flat. If I add a little love at the bottom, that could be a great preparatory chord if it acts as the 5 chord going to a new 1. So the 5 chord of A, if A was the 5 chord, it would be the 5 of D. All right, so if D is 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or minor 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I do an A chord, that's a dominant 7 flat 5. It's a nice preparation for a D major 7 chord. It's also a nice preparation for a D minor chord. Excuse me. Here's the A7 with a flat 5. So if I did a song at D minor, and there's that A flat 7 dominant. Okay? It's a great variation when you have a 5 chord trying to go to 1, whether for major or minor. Okay? And then we go to half diminished 7th. We're only going to do 2 more varieties here on the keyboard. So a half diminished 7th, let's stay in A for a second. First off, we're going to start with a diminished triad. What's an A diminished triad? What are those notes? And I'll go ahead and answer, because I know y'all are just antsy to just jump out with the answer, but right now, just let me go ahead and do it. Okay, an A major triad, A, C sharp, and E. To diminish it, we have to flat both the 3rd and the 5. So now here's a flatted 3rd and a 5. So there's a diminished triad. Half diminished 7 means we're going to use just this plain old minor 7. There's the major 7 of A, there's the minor 7. In a minute, we're going to do fully diminished 7, and that's going to be a slightly different thing. But notice this particular chord. I'm calling this an A half diminished 7th chord. Okay? A half diminished 7th chord. What are those notes? Say them with me. A, C, E flat, and G. So I'm going to write that over here. Here's an A half diminished. I got a slash in my little degree symbol, right? And we just said those notes are an A, C, E flat, and G. Look at that. It's the same selection of notes. You got the A here, you got the G there, the E flat there, and the C there. Now, I'm going to make this statement. I'm going to make it a couple of times. I want you to understand the reason what I'm saying, and if you don't understand, raise your hand. A half diminished 7th chord is one voicing of a minor 6th chord. And a minor 6th chord is a different voicing of a half diminished 7th chord. It's the same pool of notes. It's the same group of notes, right? It's the same 4 notes. We just, in this situation, we've got a C on the bottom, so we call it a minor 6th. In this situation, we've got an A on the bottom, so we call it an A diminished, a half diminished 7. Did that make sense? Okay? Now, you may not be using these chords a lot yet, but stick a pin in this piece of information, because when you start messing around with these chords, and you, let's say you're a piano player, and you start figuring out these, like let's say a minor sixth voicing, or where your hand can go, okay, C minor sixth, that's this, boom, and you're not having to hunt it out. You can just hit it. Or on your guitar, you find that minor sixth. Ooh, when I see a minor sixth for C, I'm going to do it like this. Then you bring this topic back up in your brain and go, wait a second. Now it says I'm supposed to play A diminished, half diminished 7. I could do that minor sixth thing that I learned back when Austin was talking back in the day. I can do the same thing with my hand, making sure that the bass player or the bottom note of my voicing is matching what it's supposed to, but it's the same notes on top. It's the same harmony. Okay? So a minor sixth and a half diminished 7, it's the same thing, just a different way of saying it. Okay? And the difference in the way of saying it is which note's on the bottom, ultimately, because it's the same group of notes. The only difference is which one's the lowest pitch at any given moment, which note is the tuba playing, which note is the bass player playing. Does that make sense? I know you're not using those chords and things yet, but I want you to put a pin in that, because it's going to keep, this topic's going to keep coming up over and over, that a certain selection of notes could have more than one name as things go along. And you want to kind of know the variations of them so you can communicate and you can see what's going on.